Welcome to another episode of Experience West Virginia. We have a very special guest today, Kenny Burgess. He has fond memories from his childhood in this very house. All right, so I'm here today with Kenny Burgess. He was down here doing some fishing with Kendall. And Kenny, why don't you tell us what what this place means to you?
Well, I remember in this room when I was probably 2 or 3 years old. My granddad would peel apples and quarter them and give me bites of apples and
So your grandfather lived in this house?
Right. My granddad and grandmother lived here until they died, and we lived in the house just 200 yards up the road here.
And that house was here until the 85 flood?
Right, the 85 flood took it. Yeah, Charlie Rhodes and Savannah Rhodes lived here then, and the flood took it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about what it was like then compared to now. Were there a lot of other buildings around, or how has it changed?
The landscape has changed. The flood changed the ground, washed places out and filled places in and everything. There used to be a pretty good bank from your corn crib out there to our house. It was a pretty steep bank here. But that's all. Of course, they probably pushed a lot of the dirt, with the dozer and graded it and leveled it up. But the ground has changed quite a bit.
And has the river changed?
Yeah,
out
the
front
river's
here?
changed completely. It was used to be, that's what we call the island where the river is now, over on that side. My dad he had a hog pen in that island, and he kept the hogs there part of the time. I don't know why he had them over there, but he had a little place fenced in and a pen there that he kept the hogs in. I remember him carrying the slop across the river of an evening and to feed them.
Huh. That's interesting. So has this field, has it always been a hay field whenever you were little?
Yeah,
was it a hay field too?
And corn. We planted a lot of corn in the bottom there. Yeah.
Whenever you were young, how many people actually lived in this area? Has it decreased in population or has it gained in population, do you think?
No, that's Don Waybride and Ari Bell lived up where Dorothy lives now.
Mm-hmm.
And John Chisholm lived down at the bridge. Of course, he's gone. And Pete Cosner lived below the road there on the other side of the bridge when I was a kid. And I'm not sure he lived there. He lived in Canaan, but he farmed that. He owned it, and he rented that house too. Their names were Webbs from Pennsylvania, I think. Come in here and lived there a good while. But there's fewer people now, except up on the farm up on the hill. All those houses have been built since
Right, the housing development.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what was it like whenever you lived here, going out to get groceries and things? Is it still kind of the same as it is now? Did you go to Elkins to get groceries?
Yeah, that's usually where they went. My dad a lot of times on Thursday would go to the stock sale at Elkins, and in the summer that was a big deal for us, to get to go to the stockyards. But yeah, the grocery shopping they'd go to Elkins and sometimes to Davis. My uncle owned a grocery store in Davis. My dad took care of the cattle and butchered them over in the butcher shop. It sat over by the river.
Mm-hmm.
And he would butcher them, and Uncle Gilbert would cut them up and sell them in his store, the meat.
Now, do you remember what all did your dad farm to take to Gilbert? Was it just the cattle, or did he do
and
other?
pork too, and hogs too. Yeah, he raised hogs. And
What was the name of Gilbert's store? Do you remember?
it seemed to me like they called it Smith's Grocery Store. It wasn't on the main street in Davis. It was back up one block, I think, off the main street. It was a pretty good sized store he had.
So this farm actually provided a lot of the groceries for the people in Davis then.
Yeah. And also my Uncle Gilbert was a manager of this store when it was here in Jenningston.
Oh, yeah. The company store.
And he went from there, and then he was manager of a grocery store in Kempton, West Virginia. That's over near St. Thomas.
So whenever he managed that grocery store, now by the time you were born, the town was pretty much gone. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So you just know that from stories that they've told you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you can tell us about the town that you know of that your family may have passed down?
The houses, there's only 3 houses. This house, our house, and we kept the chickens in it. We called it the chicken house. It was an old house. And then, of course, the church house and the schoolhouse was standing up in the bottom here. We put corn out in the bottom, mostly. Sometimes he'd plant corn up on the top on the hill. We called that up on the hill, but the farm part up there. But primarily the corn was growing here, and we'd be hoeing. We'd have to hoe the corn, and my brother and my dad had 2 horses, Clyde and Nell. And Nell was the best horse to cultivate with. She did pretty good. Clyde would get off track sometimes, so he usually used Nell.
You told me a story once about lightning striking the building out front here.
Yeah, it struck the corn crib, and I was in there between the corn crib and the garage. It was raining and thundering, and it hit that corn crib, and it knocked me down.
Wow. Did you have any injuries from it, or
No,
it just scared you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was just a bad thunderstorm through.
So how many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had one brother who recently passed, and I had a brother died at birth, and I had 3 sisters. Yeah.
And your grandmother and grandfather lived in this house, and who else lived in the house?
My Uncle Joe and Aunt Jenny. They were never married. They were brother and sister. They was my aunt and uncle, and they lived here. In fact, they were the last ones of the family that lived here.
And Joel had bees, right?
Yeah, he had bees out where your pine trees are here.
Yeah. So did he sell the honey in Davis also, or
no?
It was just for your.
He'd give it away, but he never. I don't remember of him ever selling any.
Yeah.
He had probably 10 or 12 beehives, something like that. They had a stove, a heating stove. I don't remember them ever using a furnace.
Yeah, the stove was plumbed out the fireplace.
Yeah, my grandmother had flares around on that, and she had her honest Scotch snuff behind them fire pots. Me and my brother would get into her snuff somehow.
So the outside of the house, does it look a lot different than it did when you were?
No, not really.
Everything looks pretty much the same?
Yeah. My sister has it. My daughter, I think, has it. My Uncle Joe had a writing desk there, and that's where he kept his chewing gum. Us kids would come in, he'd give us a piece of chewing gum out in the rain.
So where did you go to school whenever you lived here?
first 8 years was up at Plains Hill. And then I think it was the 9th grade in Davis, and then we went to Thomas. And that's where I graduated from Thomas.
So did you spend a lot of time over here with your grandparents since you just lived next door?
A good bit, yeah.
And so besides the farming and, taking stuff to Davis, did they have any other things that you can remember that they liked to do?
My parents you're talking about?
Yeah. And your parents and your grandparents?
Yeah. Well, I know on Sundays this house would be full of people every Sunday. My grandmother always fixed a baked dinner on Sunday, and her children would come in. That was Gilbert and Homer and Orphy, and Rose lived in Cumberland. Sometimes they'd come up, but there's always that big table in the dining room. She'd bake pies and cakes on Saturday for Sunday dinner, and just about every Sunday she had a baked dinner for them. Yeah.
So you got to see all of your cousins and relatives about every Sunday.
Yeah. A lot of them. Not all of them. There's 11. I had 11 aunts and uncles, so not all of them. Some of them, one lived in Lewisburg and different places. Some of them was too far away, Cumberland. But yeah, I got a lot of memories here.
How was the fishing back then? Did you do a lot of fishing?
Yeah. Mostly bass. They didn't stock trout back then when I was a kid, but we caught a lot of bass out of Dry Fork. Yeah.
And the hunting,
and
how was that?
My uncle Uncle Joel, he fished a lot, and that's who taught me to fish and hunt.
Was there a lot of game back then? Did you do a lot of hunting?
Yeah. Sometimes my dad would be working away. Sometimes he worked in the woods away, and I'd miss the bus intentionally and go in the kitchen door and get the shotgun out the back door, and Uncle Joe would be waiting on me.
So you go hunting then?
The timbers up Laurel River is much bigger now than what it was back then. See, they logged it at one time. You might have some pictures that up Laurel River there wasn't any timber. They cut everything. It hadn't grown back like it is now. It's timber's a lot bigger now than what it was back when I was a kid.
So when we look at it, we think of it's a forest all the way up through there. But when you were little, it was clear cut.
Yeah, practically.
It was just saplings coming up.
It was growing back somewhat in the 40s. I was born in 42, so probably in the 50s before I got up in there. But my mother had pictures of where everything was either cut or mashed down or something. You could see clear to the top of the mountain. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But it's all grown back with big timber now.
Yeah.
And it's a wilderness area, so they can't cut any timber in Laurel.
Well, that's all very interesting. We sometimes sit and think, I try to keep pictures around in the bed and breakfast so that as people walk around, they can kind of imagine what it was like whenever they were here. And we're hoping to get some metal detectors. We found 3 pieces of script so far.
Yeah, you showed me that.
Yeah. And so we're hoping to find some other things. We actually found a pocket knife. Remember me showing that to you? That real old knife. It's kind of in not very good shape because it's been in the ground a while. But we're hoping to find some more things, and I'd love for you to come down and see them whenever as we find things. But this is such a special place to so many people. But your family was actually here for the longest period of time as of right now.
Yeah.
So there have been a lot of generations of people who've grown up in this house.
Yeah.
But we really enjoy having you down so that you can keep telling us these stories. So we can keep track of the history and everything that was here. Because if we don't talk about it, then, you know, people who come here, they'd never believe that it was a town.
That was like my mother. She knew a lot of things, you know, that happened years back, and now she's gone, and we really don't have no source of information, only what we remember, what she told us, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing. We have to continue to tell those stories so that they don't, you know, go away. Because, like I said, people would never imagine that there was a whole town here whenever they come to stay. You know, they see the pictures and they're astounded at how many buildings were actually here, because you would never know it. There's very little indication of a town, a few foundations and, you know, the rock walls or the slab burner and, you know, a few things like that. But other than that, you'd never even know.
No, you never. And the same way on up where Dorothy lives, you know, there's a little town up there too.
Mm-hmm. Pearly Town, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Kenny, it's been so good talking to you today, and you'll have to come back and tell us some more stories another day. But we've really enjoyed having you, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, I'd like to come over and make that fishing trip that we made today. I think this is 3 times now I've done it.
Well, you'll have to stop in, and every time you do it, so that we can corner you and get some more stories out of you. But you're always welcome here. You're always welcome to come back, you and your family, anytime. We love to hear stories from people who have memories of Jenningston and this house. If you have memories from this special place, we'd love to hear them. Contact us at lrcbnb.com. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. We'll see you next time on Experience West Virginia.